Morning, Chairman. Good morning, Directors.
Morning.
Tom McCone, Chief Financial Officer. In one moment to share monthly report. Okay, I'm going to provide financial results for the month of February and then also year to date for the first 2 months of the year. So we'll start with system generated revenues. What you can see here, fare and passes were down relative to budget and down to last year as well. That was driven by a little bit lower ridership than we anticipated in the month of February, and that showed up in our lower fare and pass totals for the month. That was mostly offset by positive returns on the non-fare box side of things. We had solid investment income and investment returns there, generating that additional non-fare box revenue, $2.3 million positive to budget. So overall total system generated revenue for the month was down just about $500,000 for the month, up a tiny bit to what we were last year. When we added into the year-to-date numbers, you can see the impact of February on the fare and pass totals. So those carried forward because January was relatively flat to budget. You can see that's offset by that additional non-fare box income from that investment category. So total system generated revenue for the year up $1.8 million to budget, $3.3 million positive to last year. On the expenses side of things, we have a little bit of timing in the month of February. So on the labor side of things, we had an additional payment as a result of one of the collective bargaining agreements that was signed last year. That showed up in February. That offsets the positive variance that we had for the month in January. Material positive to budget, that's due by lower usage than budgeted for. So we had a little bit lower parts, vehicle parts usage, primarily due to the newer vehicles that we have, right? More new buses, more new rail cars. So that's driving that material use a little bit lower. Fuel positive to budget, that's because we've got a better price. We were able to lock in a better price at the end of last year. February, that timing, that'll even out over the next couple of months, and you'll see we're even for the year. Security services, back on budget. I noted last month we had positive variance. That was going to come down in the month of February, and that's what we see here for security services, so right on budget there. Other expenses, positive variance due to timing. I'll go to the next page. You'll see there that other expenses, this is year to date, pretty much right on budget with what we have for our contractual services there. We carry forward everything. We see that the remaining negative variances in that power category. I do expect that to even out in the coming months on a year to date basis. The rest of these are pretty much on budget or slightly positive to budget. On the public funding side of things, I'm going to go through 3 slides. We're going to start with the monthly results. So these are the collections we had for the most recent month for each of our public funding sources. The most notable one there is sales tax. Sales tax kind of drove the $4.3 million favorable to budget on our public funding for our monthly collections. We're finishing out 2024. So 2024 public funding results here show $17.6 million favorable to budget. That's due entirely to the positive results from that sales tax funding that we have. That's offsetting the negative that we had in the real estate transfer tax coming in. That was about $14 million under budget, but overall public funding, $17.6 million favorable to budget for 2024. And then so far in 2025, we're $7.7 million favorable to budget on the public funding side of things for those streams that have come in so far this year. On the commodities side of things, we made one purchase in the month of February, and that was to fix a little bit more of our diesel fuel. So you can see there that fixed forward purchase is now 70% of our anticipated volume for 2026. We took advantage of a dip in price in the forward pricing there to lock in more of that fuel. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
2 years of a dip in February. Has anyone identified what has happened? I mean, I have some ideas of what I think is happening, but you all are the one that deal with the day-to-day. So has there been any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, are you speaking specifically about the fare and pass revenue?
Right.
Yeah, so like I said, driven entirely by ridership, and I'm happy to have Molly join me if she wants to talk a little bit about some of what they're seeing. But slowdown in ridership in February is particularly cold, and we know that weather has an outsized impact on ridership. So that may be a lot behind it, but Molly, feel free to add to that.
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking, I said, well, the past couple of Februaries, it hasn't been like bone cold, brutal like it normally is.
Right.
Molly,
Tom clearly listens when I talk about ridership. We do think it is primarily driven by weather. We did have two particular weeks of very cold weather in February. And also what we've noticed as well is when you have very cold weather, warm, very cold weather, warm, kind of that like juxtaposition against people. They're like, I'm just going to drive for a while, or I'm just going to not do some things. And what we also noticed as well is where we do see lower revenue is on our limited use tickets, our 1 days that are sold at rail stations. And those are primarily used for events or people just riding for one-off activities. So when it's cold, we do know that that has an impact. We're going to continue to look at our ridership trends as we move through the rest of the year. But what I would note is why we feel pretty good for the rest of the year is our St. Patrick's Day ridership was actually 10% or 30,000 rides above where we were in 2019. So we had more riders on St. Patrick's Day for the parade this year than we did before COVID. And that's a good indicator that when people have something to do and it's good weather, they will ride and they will use CTA.
Yeah, I was wondering if, and I don't stay here, but when I look at the calendar, there's really nothing happening in Chicago in February. So I wonder if that played a part in it. January, it's New Year's, you have that group, you still have people that come in from out of town in January. So I was wondering if that plays a part in it as well.
It can play a part, but what we have also seen is while there's not, those big events like Lollapalooza or NASCAR, some of those, we've seen that with the recent opening of the Damon Green Line station, as well as improved bus service, we are outperforming our ridership at the United Center. So United Center, there's Bulls games, there's Blackhawk games during that, and we've been outperforming this year than we did last year from a ridership perspective. And so that's where we're going to continue to look. How do we capitalize on those events that are happening, not just the big events, but some of those sporting events, and see how we can make sure we capture all those riders and then work to transition and make sure that those individuals come back and ride us more.
Good. Yeah, when the CTA was outside United Center, the Bulls win, so keep one out there. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions?
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Raquel.
Yes, we talked about this a little bit during our briefings, and while I don't want to discount the role of the weather, I think there are other reasons behind this, in part because we've been lagging behind our sister agencies in other cities. So one of my hypotheses too, in addition to the weather, could be our communication strategy in re-engaging customers that may not be quite ready yet to come back. I would love to hear more about what are some of the communications and engagement strategies coming up.
Yeah, so something that we talked about around re-engagement and how we start to work with having more communications and more marketing to our riders for St. Patrick's Day specifically. We did some very targeted activities and targeted digital marketing. So we were looking at where people lived and pushing them and reminding them to take CTA for the parade. And I think that was a big driver of why we saw higher ridership at the parade. We've also been doing some digital and targeted marketing around the Kennedy construction. So the Kennedy is going to be shut down for the remainder of the summer and fall. I think they hope that they get open as quickly as possible, but we are working with our partners at IDOT to target people who are typically drivers and try to get them to ride more. Those are more tactile efforts. Those are looking at where are we having service, where's their activities, where's their disruption to other modes, and how can we capitalize. And we've been working on a lot of those tactical activities. And then we've also been starting to think through and develop a longer term marketing strategy. And that also involves the strategic plan and ensuring that we're marketing around the strategic plan and engaging folks around what's the future of CTA and what they would like to see. And then we also have different other touch points that are going to be happening. We have the frequent network that working on a lot of those we've talked about that has been driving ridership, that's both the activities, and then we've also been starting to think through a strategy. And so what you and I had discussed is we're improving service on the frequent network, and we need to make sure people are aware of it and they're understanding the benefits. So those are some of those key touch points. But I would say as we start to look towards the rest of the year and think about how do we turn and take some of the tactical marketing efforts that we've done and turn it into a more global comm strategy. We are looking towards the summer and looking towards a more consistent marketing of how do we make sure we continue to market around special events and continue to have that conversation with riders of you may be comfortable taking us for the Bulls game or for a special event, but hey, we're here all the time, and trying to push and engage directly with those riders to understand that they can come and ride with us.
Great.
I do plan, as we continue to go through the rest of the year, have more updates on sort of our overall global marketing strategy and continue to have that conversation with the board about what else we can do.
Thank you. I think those efforts to connect specific events or situations like the Kennedy are really effective, and I applaud the efforts of the team doing that. What I've been lacking is more of a message for folks who left CTA and haven't come back yet because they see narratives out there or depictions of our system that are not the most positive. Some of them fair, some of them unfair. And issues like cleanliness, frequency, and security, haven't seen those addressed in a more global message to Chicago and saying, hey, we're doing better and this is how we're doing better. So I would encourage you all to consider what those messages could look like and what kind of campaign do we need to do above and beyond the one-offs for events and construction.
Yeah, and I would note too we have had individuals who have left the system and haven't come back, but what we really do see is we have the same number of active Venture cards on the system today as we did pre-COVID, but we see they're riding about 4 to 5 times less in a given month. And so that is what we're really looking at. Is we used to see them riding 6, 8 times, 10 times. I think it was went all the way up to 14 was sort of our average. Now we're seeing more like 10 times a month. And so when you miss that delta of 4, that is where we kind of talk about where we're at from a ridership perspective. And so, yes, there are people we've lost that we need to get back, but we also need to figure out how do we turn that dial of you're back a little bit. We're seeing you sometimes. How do we get you from being a sometimes or infrequent rider to a frequent rider so that we can continue to capitalize on those? So yes, 100% hear you. And it is something we're thinking about.
Thanks.
And I would just echo, Director, the conversation here. I think that question of how do we get those people that are coming for special events and coming back to keep coming is giving them a good experience, right, in that. So I think looking a lot at the factors that we know are impacting people's experience, service, reliability, cleanliness, security. We know what people want. And I agree with you that I think there's an opportunity now to kind of bring together a lot of efforts under one umbrella so that people can follow what we're doing across many fronts, and the impact that it's making and the successes that we're having, because it's a heavy lift to kind of address the perception of CTA and improve people's understandings of the work that we've done and where we still have room to improve and the work that we're doing in those areas. So I think it is time, and it's a good moment to kind of bring those together under a larger campaign of sorts. And that is something we're talking about, and we'll keep you updated on.
Great. Thank you.
Director Ortiz.
Yes, thank you for that. At our briefing as well, I asked a couple of questions about just federal funding and how we're leveraging that, and or how are we planning for scenarios. If you'd like to share a little bit on that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so the federal funding that we have is primarily for our capital program, right? And we have both formula funds and discretionary funds in the capital program. We have not experienced any change yet with respect to the grants that we have in place, either the executed or the awarded ones. We have been talking to other transit agencies across the country because I know that the FTA and DOT had said that they're looking at all of their grant programs, right? They're looking at what's been awarded but not obligated yet. We still see them moving forward. So we still see grants moving forward that have been awarded, moving towards that phase where they do get obligated. They're obviously under the review process. They have not indicated anything back to the CTA that any of our funds are particularly at risk. But, we certainly are keeping a close eye on everything and sort of have identified sort of where we need to move grants forward in the process to make sure that they get executed so that those funds are in place by the time we want that work to start. we'll definitely keep you abreast, right, as we do hear more. And obviously the entire industry is interested in sort of the new kind of what comes out from DOT around their funding programs as well. Federal government's undergoing their budgeting process right now. We're all paying a lot of attention to that. And obviously working with APTA, the other organizations that are lobbying for transit across the country, to emphasize the importance of these programs and how they do fit with the criteria of the current administration.
Thank you.
Chairman Barclay.
Ms. Piper, what specific initiatives are we making to capture those who are going to be frustrated by being on the Kennedy?
Yeah, so we, from a marketing perspective, we have digital marketing that we're doing, targeted marketing to folks that are in that area that we know take the Kennedy or are in the communities surrounding the Kennedy. So there's targeted marketing. We're doing some marketing around park and rides as well. So letting people know they can drive half the way, especially if they live further out, they can drive and then park at one of our park and rides along the Blue Line. And then what we also are doing is we're adding service to the Blue Line. So we are adding additional service on the O'Hare branch to support more riders. There's going to be more service in the AM and PM peaks, as well as more service on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. And that will go into effect on April 20th. So we're taking a sort of twofold approach. How do we market and make sure people know? And then also how to, Acting President Learson's point, how do we make sure they have a good experience? So we're adding a little bit more service there to help address those loads.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Director Ja.
No further questions. Thank you.
And Director Jakes, Director Eady has joined us. Director Eady, do you have any questions for Tom McCone or Molly Poppy regarding the finance report?
Well, I raised some things during the briefing, and I do apologize for my late arrival, but I did raise some things during the briefing, and Tom addressed it in light of what the tariffs and those sorts of things might impact the materials and fuel, and he spoke to that. If he chooses, he can restate it. But I also raised up about the St. Patrick's Day, and knowing that it represented a high ridership, were there any takeaways or lessons learned, best practices that we could employ to continue that increased ridership? And Molly did speak to that. She can choose to restate it.
Yeah, thank you, Director Eady. I talked about this a little bit as well. Well, what we've really learned from the St. Patrick's Day targeting, and we've gotten better over time, and that St. Patrick's Day is a culmination of efforts that we did last summer to now, is really thinking about that targeting of how do we do targeted social media and target communications on our different digital channels. And then we also did some very specific station activations, which was also fun, where we had activities happening at the station, encouraging people to come to CTA, come get a green pin to help show their St. Patrick's Day pride and CTA pride. So we really did learn that. We learned also that email marketing is effective in different avenues. And so those are things that we've honed and worked on over time and will continue to build and improve on throughout the year.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Good. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Tom. Agenda item number 4 is the review of an ordinance amending Ordinance 024-143, approving the fiscal years 2025 through 2029 capital improvement program.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. So this fiscal year 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan amendment proposes to repurpose Rebuild Illinois state bond funds from projects at or nearing completion. Project balances and savings will be reprogrammed into the Forest Park Modernization Phase 1 project and the California Blue Line Station ASAP project. Funds are now available from the following projects: the new non-revenue rail facility, the Harlem Station bus bridge on the Blue Line, the Blue Line traction power, Barry Damon Canal, Lake Street Bridge track renewal, and the facilities improvement, Des Plaines rail yard track upgrades, and Harlem Yard water tower removal. Approving this CIP, the current CIP totals to $6,959,691,463. This amendment proposes to increase that CIP by $23,438,742. We were able to do this because CTA continues to make great progress in advancing state Rebuild Illinois capital projects. I know you'll hear more about these highlights of these projects during the construction report. Rebuild Illinois funds are available from the projects nearing completion with budget savings, as I mentioned before. Those Rebuild Illinois funds are now being provided to the next phase of projects in construction or nearing construction, which are the Forest Park Rebuild Phase 1 project and the California Station Blue Line ASAP project. We continue to make great progress in utilizing our available capital funds and advancing our next projects, which is why we're asking for your approval of this CIP amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, I have no questions, Tom.
Director Recajo?
No questions.
Director Ortiz?
None.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ja?
No.
Director Eady?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement to commend the staff management for certainly the completion of the projects as they're done and the availability of those contingency dollars that are being utilized in new ways. So I just wanted to commend the group for that. I think that was just good fiscal management.
Yeah, thanks, Director Eady. And I know our Chief Infrastructure Officer will describe those projects in more detail, but these funds are available because we were on time and on budget with the other projects, and we're actively spending that state capital money.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
And now I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Recajo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Eady.
Yeah.
You may now proceed to agenda item number 5.
Agenda item 5 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional trade agreement with the city of Chicago, with Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events for 2025. Tom.
Great, thank you. My final item this morning, Tom McCone, again, Chief Financial Officer. Today I present for your consideration a case or its predecessor since 1992. The total trade value of this year's taking place in 2025. This includes events like the Chicago Gospel Music Festival, Chicago Blues Festival, Taste of Chicago, and the Chicago Air and Water Show, as well as smaller events and public awareness campaigns. DCASE will promote CTA at each of these programs and events in various ways, including on signage at events, in email newsletters, and with travel information on the event websites. CTA will be invited to have a dedicated space at 1 Maxwell Street Market, Daily Plaza Farmers Market, Taste of Chicago, Air and Water Show, and 1 DCASE program at Millennium Park. CTA may also use dedicated space at the Taste of Chicago, the Air and Water Show, and the Air and Water Show to feature the community bus. In exchange, CTA will provide unsold interior car card space on bus and rail trains for DCASE to promote its programs and events. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
No questions, Tom.
Director Recajo, any questions? Director Ortiz?
I appreciate the partnership. Thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ja?
Can you talk a little bit about any additional strategies? I know Molly talked about it in terms of St. Patrick's Day. Is it kind of moving the same contract year over year? Or are you providing any additional mandates in terms of how they can partner with you to come up with additional strategies or channels in terms of how we're getting promoted through that?
Yeah, I think so. DCASE, and you'll recognize that this is not the only co-promotional agreement that we bring before you, right? You've seen it for the marathon, you've seen it for other events as well. So really one part of the strategy is to access as many of those co-promotional opportunities as possible, because DCASE is going to reach an audience that we can't necessarily reach, and we want to make sure that we're in every channel that they're using to reach that audience, which is why we've noted here something that's additional that's been added in recent years is something like the community bus, right? We didn't have a community bus, several years ago. Now we do have a community bus. So we're asking for space at these events for this community bus. So again, we can touch more of the audience that this is touching. So 2 parts to the strategy. One is as many co-promotional agreements as we can put in place, especially with valued partners. And then two is making sure that we're maximizing the channels that they have to reach their customers and utilizing the assets that we have to leverage with how they're reaching their customers. And a lot of this recently is getting us on site, right? Getting that community bus at the Air and Water Show. Think of how many people that's going to touch. So that's how it's been actualized.
I think kind of highlighting some of the changes as part of that contract would be beneficial, just from a purely outsourcing versus co-building together efforts. So if you can provide any additional details on some newer contracts, or, you know, kind of how you were thinking about co-promoting would be helpful.
Yeah, and I'll mention another one too. We did one with the Field Museum where we were able to get free access for all of our employees, right? As part of our co-promotional to sort of encourage employee engagement as part of that. You may be seeing that we had
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, you see that we're having our Employee Appreciation Day later this month, right? So it's kind of relevant now because that was one of the benefits is we kind of get that corporate membership in exchange as part of this advertising exchange. So again, it's kind of leveraging the best of what we both have to offer. Welcome.
Director Eady?
No questions.
Thank you. Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes? Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 6.
Agenda item 6 is the review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with RTA, Metra, and PACE for the Regional Day Pass Pilot Program. Molly Poppy.
Okay. Hello, and I apologize. I did not introduce myself the last time. I'm Molly Poppy. I'm the Chief Planning and Innovation Officer. I am here to seek favorable consideration from the board for an amendment to the Regional Day Pass Intergovernmental Agreement. This is an amendment to the IGA that this board approved last summer. Specifically, this amendment addresses a few simple changes needed to ensure that the IGA aligns with how the fare product will be purchased and utilized. The Regional Day Pass will continue to provide riders with a seamless one-day fare product for use on CTA, Metra, and PACE. And we have been working with our partners to launch this new pass, and we are on track for a successful launch in the very near future. And I also forgot to introduce my colleague, Nicholas Crone, Vice President of Fare Systems. Any questions?
Nicholas Crone, Vice President of Fare Systems.
Thank you. I have no questions.
Right. Director Rakeo?
First of all, congratulations. This is the type of collaboration that we want to see. And so a couple things. One, if you were to say in one sentence to our customers what this is about and how it's going to benefit them, how will you tell them?
Frictionless regional transit experience.
More specific. Regular transit user, what does this mean? For
You wanted me to be succinct, but
how many what's going to benefit them in terms of their wallet?
it is a reduced fare combined CTA, Metra, and PACE pass, where you can ride on all three of those transit agencies as much as you want for 24 hours.
For $9.50.
For $9.50 on the weekends, and then $10 during the week.
Throughout the region.
Throughout the region, everywhere you want to go.
Cool. Thank you. Then more specific to the conversations that are taking place in Springfield around funding. One of the requests from legislators is more collaboration, more coordination among the different transit agencies. What else is in the pipeline to meet the needs for increased collaboration among agencies?
Yeah, there's a couple things on fares, and then there's other service-related projects as well. On fares, the Regional Day Pass builds on the Regional Connect Pass, which was the monthly version. We launched that back in 2023. We also plan to move forward this year with a new mobile app, and that will be coming to the board. We do want to start to look at how we can create more seamless experience, more seamless travel and trip planning throughout the region that will cover CTA, Metra, and PACE. And so that's another sort of digital experience that we're working on from a collaboration and trip planning perspective. And then on the converse side, on the service side, CTA and PACE have been working together. We both have different visioning studies that are looking at our bus service and are looking at our overall service plans around bus. And so we're coordinating with PACE around what service they're looking at, where our service is, how we can better align our service. So those are two sort of key points that I have right now. Additionally, we're working with Cook County and Metra on an infill station study. So we're looking at where we may be missing rail stations along our various branches, both Metra and CTA. And so looking to see where we can fill those gaps in. And then, you know, we have the regular service planning that we do every quarter, where we look at how we can improve our service. And one of the things that we've been taking a closer look at is, how does our service align with Metra service? How do our bus lines who come in and specifically stop at a station make sure that we're not like 10 minutes off when that Metra train is coming in, because Metra is less frequent than we are. So making sure that we hit where we can be at that train station to pick up those riders. So those are sort of, there's the day-to-day stuff that I would say we do all the time, which is the service planning. And then we really have these key strategies around fare systems and around trip planning, and then also on the service side. And then longer term, we have started really active conversations about thinking how our fares can work even better together. So we've been working with Metra and PACE about how we should be looking at the Ventra system and how we can improve the Ventra system to allow for more Metra integration and CTA and PACE integration across our fares.
Great.
That's longer term. That's not something that you'll hear about, going live, tomorrow, but that is something that we are in active conversations with, and we will continue to come back to the board and talk about that work.
That's great. And the more we do to communicate that to the leaders, the better. Is the ultimate vision that one day we will be able to have one app to move us across the region seamlessly from Metra to PACE, to CTA, to paratransit, to all those things?
To Divvy, we really want to think about mobility in the region as a whole and look for an experience that allows for that more seamless digital integration for all mobility. So yes, the long-term vision is that you would have a true seamless integrated fare system and fare network that would allow people to have that integration and that experience. And what I would say is what we have today the app does combine CTA, Metra, and PACE. Metra has a proof of payment ticket. CTA and PACE have a tap on, tap off. And so what we're looking at is, how do we make sure that we're being cognizant of how each transit agency needs to function, but the customer doesn't need to know that. The customer doesn't have to have that understanding. We should be working that on the back end to make sure that it is easy for the customer and that they don't have to sort of understand those differences or navigate those differences.
Great. The pilot starts when?
Very soon, Director Requejo. We've been doing some testing. It's all looking pretty good, but very soon the board will be the first to know when I have a specific launch date.
Right, understood. I would suggest for when the pilot starts, it would be helpful to have some sort of presentation to the board and the public as to what would it take to arrive to that future where we have one app, one system to go across all the time, not just one day, any day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I would add, Director, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is a key component of the conversations in Springfield. So the launching of the state pass is well timed in that regard, in terms of what it provides and the symbol it is of our commitment to this and our interest in this. I have been voicing, just so people understand, CTA has actually been the leader regionally on this front. We do not need to be convinced of the value of these efforts and moving towards in this direction. Absolutely not, right? We've been at the table and would encourage even further engagement from everyone in the region on this issue.
Good.
Director Ortiz.
Thank you. Shared all our comments and specifically how we're articulating it so that people understand it. It's a fabulous move. So thank you for all your work on that.
Chairman Barclay.
I echo my colleagues. Thank you. this is good work. So move in the right direction, as well as some of the concerns that we hear in Springfield. And I think this is an exciting initiative, and we're looking forward to hearing more about it.
Director Ja?
Don't want to repeat anything, but Molly, the sentence that you came up with, I think you need to start socializing that as a ending statement.
Yep.
Especially adding the cost at the end, revised. Great sentence.
Yeah.
And thank you for thinking on your feet.
I thought he wanted 3 words, but I gave more.
Especially with the cost in it. So let's take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Director Eady?
Yes, as I stated during the briefing, this is a great value add, and especially that area around the 24-hour card use versus expiring at 3 a.m. I think the riders will see that to be a greater advantage. So good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo? Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja? Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 7, purchase and/or sales award recommendations.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number A1, which is a contract award for transit operations. No questions.
Director Requejo, any questions?
Questions?
Any questions from any other members of the board? Director Ortiz, Chairman Barclay, Director Ja, Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may now proceed to contract number B1.
B1 contract today is a contract award for infrastructure. No questions.
Questions from other members of the board? Director Requejo,
No questions.
Director Ortiz, Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ja, Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions. You may now proceed to contract number E1.
E1 is a contract award for communications. No questions.
Director Requejo, any questions?
Questions?
Director Ortiz, Chairman Barclay, Director Ja, Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may now proceed to contract numbers G1 through G3.
G1 through G3 are contract awards for technology. No questions.
Director Requejo,
Yes. I think for transparency reasons, we'd love to hear more about what the contract includes. And it's my understanding that part of the contract includes an expansion of the zero eyes technology, which is related to our security systems, which is an issue of concern for a lot of riders. So could you tell us more about the different elements of the IT and particularly the zero eyes expansion?
Yes, absolutely. Caroline Gallagher, your Chief Technology Officer.
Your name.
Caroline Gallagher, your Chief Technology Officer, and Director Requejo. I think you're referring to the Carousel contract. That is a contract that is really a blanket purchase agreement. Carosoft is a reseller of IT products and services. And we've been using it to streamline our procurement. We do a lot of small cloud-based procurements. And so it's a very efficient process, and we leverage the savings of the pricing from the state. So some of the pilots that we've been doing are improvements to our employee communication platform. We've done a FOIA pilot for a request platform for law and various others. And one of the pilots that we've been expanding is the Zero Eyes pilot. But I'm going to let Kevin respond to that as he's more familiar with it.
What is it specifically?
I would like to know more about what the results of the pilot have been and what makes you comfortable expanding to $1.2 billion zero eyes.
So
if we can just have introductions for the record, please.
Kevin Ryan, Vice President of Security. So currently there's been approximately 82 detections made on the system, around 10 actual lethal or determined to be firearms. Of those recent ones, there's been 6 arrests. We're very happy with the system in that it detects the exposed weapons quickly. We get a dispatch notice in under 2 minutes most of the time. It simultaneously not only goes to us, to OEMC, the Chicago Police Department, Public Transportation, STSC room, which has the ability then to pull up the cameras immediately and start looking at exactly what's going on. The reason I really preferred Zero Eyes over other companies was they are not relying 100% on AI to make a determination. AI makes the detection, but they send it to a control center where former military or law enforcement look at the pictures and make a determination or a determination on what type of weapon that is and send it out as needed. If it's determined to be a law enforcement weapon or a toy, or it's sent as a FYI through an email, we get the picture, we know what's going on, we monitor it, we back to it as needed, but and if it's determined to be a probable firearm, it's sent immediately to 911 CPD and us. It comes over on an app and also on a desktop system. So all that combined, we're happy with the follow-up by them, the verification, the notifications that are coming out. We're pretty happy with it. And like I said, recently 6 arrests. Those are 6 guns taken off the system. 1 arrest was actually a person, an armed robbery in progress.
Great. Thank you for the detail. And if we were to approve this extension, what would that look like in terms of coverage?
It would be up to 1,500 cameras on the system. We would deploy it out, number one, based on historical crime data, current crime data as well, where we're seeing weapons, the surrounding area, the area stations that would be affected by surrounding area weapon issues, weapon-related violence, and then obviously Homeland Security and critical infrastructure locations.
Got it. And the pilot was already checking for that station area surroundings too, right?
A couple of them, yes, were selected for that reason.
That's good. What are our plans to inform folks that this technology is up and running and will be implemented throughout the system?
We're talking with the President's office and our communications office to develop a policy. Obviously, from my point of view, from a security point of view, I don't want specific locations noted, but I do want the public to know that we're using it. And I do want the public to know when we get success stories, because I want people that are thinking or wondering if they're going to bring guns on the CTA to know we're going to find out about it, and the police are very good at arresting them. So.
Great, thanks.
Right, now that we've seen the success, right, which was a key component to kind of monitor how this would be implemented and what we would see. What I want the public to know are the specifics, but I also want them to know that we are innovative, looking at state-of-the-art technology to approach security, not just all the traditional methods that you always hear. And I want our employees to know that. I think they're also key to understanding this technology and what we're seeing from it. So looking forward to, again, making that part of that larger umbrella discussion of lots of tools that we're using across many fronts on our system.
Great. And connected to the prior conversation, this is also another issue that is not only important for our riders and employees, but also for legislators to know that there is improvements. It's important to communicate. We just approved a contract for communication, so I would encourage you all to have those consulting firms to help communicate all this progress and also address some of the concerns, like Kevin just mentioned, that this system has a human that checks for potential errors in detection. People may not know that. So thanks for the explanation.
Director Ortiz?
Yes, thank you. I think I've shared often about not just doing punitive approaches. Will there be more signage so that people know this is the city of Chicago? There's been a lot of great efforts to encourage no guns on the street. There still are. In the federal government, there's obviously changes. So if there are other ways also to inform the riders that no guns are allowed in the system, that would probably be really helpful to just, again, encourage people to know that they are not, and to also encourage and remind people that they shouldn't have weapons on our system, on the system. So I would encourage, if you haven't already done so, to make sure that we're coordinating signage accordingly or other methods of communications so that people understand that to begin with.
There is current signage out about firearms. We are in discussions. We've raised the issue of possibly putting out a little bit more of a detail about zero eyes being in the system as well.
Yeah, so I've seen them. I've seen the signage, but it's not like people are looking for it, right? Sometimes things need to be a little bit more in your face to be for people to actually take it in and understand that.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Jakes?
One, I was not a fan of zero eyes when we talked about it last year. After the presentation yesterday, I'm fully on board because I was able to see what it could do and how it was able to zero in on crimes that were happening in real time and crimes that had happened, which helps the police because, you know, it's one thing to say we want to help law enforcement capture the bad people, okay? But not give you the room to put the systems in place in order to do so. So, you know, I'm glad that it is working out the way it's working out. And I understand what my colleagues are saying, but I also understand that signage is definitely important. But from the side of town I come from, the ones who are going to commit crime could care less about the signs. So I guess there has to be a balance there because no, I don't believe it's that we want to let everybody know, well, you know, this is where Zero Eyes is. And if you go on 79th Street on a Dan Ryan, this Zero Eyes is going to pick you up if you have a weapon. Well, then I'm just going to go on 63rd. You know, so that's all I have to say about that. I think it's working, and I like to hear how it works next year when we talk about it again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So maybe just for clarity, I wasn't talking about signage. On the camera, I'm right here. I'm speaking more to the broader umbrella communications that Director Requejo was talking about earlier about how do we communicate to all riders that our system is safe, that we're very much taking forward action on not just, you know, instituting some systems that are already in place, but enhancing the ones that are working well. So it's a much broader communication strategy than a signage. And, you know, yes, people who are prone to do negative actions perhaps will likely still do them. But it's a broader message overall about how we're thinking about our system and how we're keeping it safe across our entire system.
And
So I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
And key to this discussion too, to some of the point you just raised, is about our cameras. We've been talking for years about our investment in 33,000 cameras and touting that. And we have an extensive camera system that we spend a lot of work maintaining and, strategically installing. We could get the critique, understandably, that some of its best work is after a crime has already been committed. We get very strong photos and that works with arrests. But this is a proactive use of those cameras, which has been, something we've really wanted to be focused on for a long time. It's been a long time coming to get a really good story about proactive use of the cameras. And I think that's a key component to letting people know also about the infrastructure. And we talk a lot in Springfield about efficiencies and good use of investments, right? And this is building on a big investment we've had for many years. It's also related to the Chicago Police Department Strategic Decision Support Center, the use of the cameras there. But I think we also need to tell a camera story, which is also a proactive, preventative measure to remind people about that infrastructure we have.
Couldn't we use a public service announcement, like talk about no smoking, that we use to identify, detect weapons and just remind people?
Yep, sure. We could, I believe there is some announcements about cameras, but and there was a big push to put signage on the buses as well for the bus cameras, but we could look at that as well.
Director Ja?
Yeah, no question, but a couple of things. I think one around the prevention. I think the stories about prevention needs to be told, not just that we think that this is going to prevent, but like the 6 arrests, I think those are good stories to share with the public to say that if that didn't happen, what could have been, right? And I think we're not seeing those stories. And then the second thing I would say, and we talked about this in the briefing, is I think we need to think about, and this is very specific to the technology contracts, what's the next best action, right? I think we can't be short-sighted to limiting the benefit of new tech to just address the issues of the past. And a lot of times when we talk about benefits of technology, we hear repeatedly that, just maintenance or keep the lights on. And I think we need to expand that to think about you're spending this much money on tech. You're not thinking about the holistic benefit that it's going to bring. That's going to set CTA up for the next 10, 20, 50 years to come. So just how do we get the most from the tech that we are bringing and create a system that allows us to get the ROI that we deserve from these investments? And I think the big part of that is having the people to support what technology is bringing as insights and having those to then do the things that we need to do. For example, someone sees something in the system, the technology can capture it, but if you don't have the people to address these problems, then what good is that technology? So I would like to, when you're talking about benefits of these contracts, expanding new technologies and bringing these innovative ideas, we really need to think about the future. And the benefit needs to articulate that in terms of what are we going to get out of it, the investment. And it's not enough to just say that it's going to solve the problem that we've been having in the past. Really expand and say, what investments are you going to make on the people side of it, on the training side of it? And so I think we need to think holistically when we're spending a good amount of money here. So I would really want to see some of those articulated plan that addresses those and not just, we're bringing in technologies. Great. So what? So not a question, but, I'd love to see some of the plans around that and how you guys are thinking about, setting up for the future.
I do want to reassure you, Director Ja, that when we do embark on a new technology, we work with the departments involved, and in the first phases of the project, we identify subject matter experts in those departments, plus what the ultimate business process is going to be for this new technology to be a part of, because as we know, technology is always part of a business process. And oftentimes that does include adding resources to departments, right, to take advantage of it. I think one good example is the disruption management effort that we've been working on with our control center and our bus supervision. We've added resources in those areas that we're training up now so that they can use that technology in their processes. They're managing the buses on the streets. And when they get those detours or unplanned reroutes, there's somebody there that can actually put that into the system and so that that can happen. We've also worked with Kevin and I think he's added some tools in the control center as a result of some of the security technologies that we've implemented.
The control center is an ongoing project, but it's, to get to your point, it's putting people in place to react to the information coming in. It's not just zero eyes.
It's like, I think overall it's
the chat bot,
yeah.
you know, being able to respond to the chat bot in somewhat of a real-time manner, it makes it more relevant.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I don't think there has been enough investment in the people aspect of it to make sure that, if there's a problem, we have to be solving the problem as well. And if there's a lot of emphasis on the problem, not a whole lot on the solving part of it. And I think it's great that you have KPIs to say, oh, I detected 500 things, but what did you do with it? And so we need to start publishing some of that. We got 500, we were able to address 10%. So then there is actually a goal for your team to say, hey, we are at 10%, can we get to 20, 30? I mean, that's more tactical, but without like putting some benchmark or a bar that you want to meet. Like, I think that's what I keep missing in the briefings. Like, we talk a lot about problems, but we're not showing the results with specific KPIs to say, I solved 5 problems out of 500. So at least we know where we stand in the benchmarking to say we can do better or this is good enough and we are okay staying here. So we just need to start thinking from a holistic perspective versus like piecemealing the problem. All right.
No, Director, I just wanted to acknowledge, and I think you're also saying forward-looking, right? Not just kind of the stuff that's right in front of us, but the staff on that. I think that's what you're hearing with the initiatives we have. But what I'm also hearing from you, and it makes me think a lot about the Springfield legislative conversation too, where we talk a lot about what could we do with the appropriate level of funding. We talk a lot about service, and sometimes that's not the audience to talk about administrative staff. But there's a point to be made about when you ask us to be innovative and broad and make a larger impact, that does bring administrative back office resources too, right? And I think this offers an opportunity to tell a story to explain that, and that to make investments in technology, you'd also have to build up resources from a people perspective, and that's funding as well.
Yeah, and just last thing is like, what is the opportunity cost? What are you losing by not doing this? You have a high tech, you could have gotten 10 things out of it, but because of inaction, you're losing. There's some cost in here of, the opportunities that's been missed that we're not articulating from on a dollar perspective. And I think that message needs to go back to Springfield. It's like you already, cost is low in terms of the benefit that you're getting out of it. We're not articulating that because we're so focused on the problems. We're not looking at holistically. If we invested X, we could get 10X. So we need to start thinking about the 10X part of that, of what these investments can give the agency, which I see missing.
Director Eady?
Yes, as I was visiting with the document around the zero eyes gun detection, and certainly I appreciate the fact that this will be able to identify, as I see here, the true positives, and I see the number of incidents and certainly the arrests. But I also, and you have to help me understand how all of this plays together, that the law enforcement are engaged, and then I see the area of non-lethal. Now I'm gonna tell you what's kind of bleeding into my question, with certainly coming from the community, understanding incidents that have occurred, and safety for the riders is vitally important. When a communication is sent out and law enforcement receives it or are engaged, and you have to tell me exactly how that plays out. When there is a sighting of something non-lethal, what is their response? Is there a communication that is sent? And the thing that I'm concerned about is there has been incidents when law enforcement is engaged and there is not maybe clarity around if what is perceived that a person may have, is it a true positive or is it a non-lethal? And sometimes there has been incidents when maybe a person has had something non-lethal, but law enforcement may engage them very aggressively, and then that comes to be a matter after the fact. So please help me to understand how that all plays out, that incidents that might be a non-lethal, but it is handled as a true positive, or maybe that never will occur. Help me.
Well, I can't say it would never occur. If it looks like a real gun, it would be sent out as a probable firearm. But what does happen, what I said, the big reason we went with Zero Eyes was the human interaction and analysis of the pictures. So in the presentation I showed you were several examples where we saw that it was obviously most likely not a firearm. Those are not sent in the same manner. They are not sent directly to the desktop or the app and sent out with as a lethal. They are sent out as a probable non-lethal, and 98% of the time there's no response because we can clearly tell it's a Nerf gun or a squirt gun. If there's like they're causing a disturbance, it's a different type of response. We're sending people out to respond to a disturbance, not a man with a gun or a person with a gun. So the two different disturbances, two different ways of responding. Like I said, most of the time we don't respond to the non-lethals. They're just sent out as more of an information. This is what popped up on the system, and that's it. The lethals are sent out in a likely lethals, I should say, are sent out in a completely different form. They're sent out with a priority message, like a man with a gun call. So, and the police get a picture of exactly what Zero Eyes saw, what we see. And they also, don't forget, are most likely pulling up those cameras immediately to get more context. So the officers are going in with more context. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess we were all trusting in that human element, that person will make that decision and make that determination, because they are there in real time. But I was just wondering about the original communication that is sent out, and is that kind of vetted? Does it go through a filter of sort? Because I would hate for something to go out as a true positive or likely positive, and in all reality, it was a non-lethal, and a person is engaged very aggressive, play out a fatality. So that's my concern. It's about safety and what these signals or communications, what do they prompt those that will be sent out to do? And that's basically it. It's about safety of individuals.
Yes. Like I said, I can tell you from experience, the training police officers get, just because it's reacted to like a man with a gun call coming in through 911, a citizen saying there's a man with a gun. This actually has more information. It shows you what's going on, but the police officer still has to make a determination, and that's what happens. Now we've got the vetting comes in play with Zero Eyes, with their control center making an assessment of what they can see. And that is sent out, and like I said, it's the non-lethal, likely non-lethals are sent in a completely different manner. And the police know, the police are getting the same message that we are, that Zero Eyes is determined this is probably not a lethal weapon, a firearm. And they make an assessment as well. But like I said, we aren't, 98% of the time, it's not something we respond to because it's not, number one, it's not a crime. It's not causing a disturbance. Unless, like I said, they're causing a disturbance. The likely firearm responses, still the officer, they are not taking that as gospel. You know, they're taking it as, this is the information we have. We're going out. We're responding. And when you get on scene, you have to assess what's in front of you. There's a lot of people that carry replica firearms out there that are doing robberies. That's a very dangerous game to play because you've got what looks like a real gun, not just police interacting with you. There's a lot of concealed carry holders out there nowadays. So if you're running around playing games with fake guns, right, you may run into real problems. But there is three layers of professionals looking at what's coming out. So we aren't overreacting, and we're giving the police officers the most information that we can give them when they're responding, instead of just the old 911 call. And the one thing to keep in mind, this is just as good as a 911. Well, if somebody's staying on a platform and somebody pulls out a gun, I don't know too many people are going to pull out their phone and call 911 with a guy with a gun next to them. They're going to wait till they're a block or two away, or they can get out of there. This is coming through. This is eyes and ears immediately coming through. The technology, I think, is really superior. It really locks in, and the response time, Zero Eyes says under 3 minutes. In reality, it's been under 2 minutes that we get the notification. So it's actually actionable to the police department. And the 6 arrests that were done, it took 6 guns off the street. One was in the process. He had just stuck up 2 people, and the police officers got on the scene and locked them up and got them charged with 2 counts of armed robbery. So it's mitigating what could be a violent crime.
Director
Thank
Eady.
you. I received it. Thank you very much. Just wanted to raise that point.
Yes, sir.
What was that?
Nothing.
Thank you.
And Ms. Gallagher, I know that, were we on contract G1, G2, G3, Karasoff?
We were on G1, Karasoft.
Director Jakes? I guess, are there any questions about contract? Do you want to introduce contracts G2 and G3? Do we have questions about contracts G2 or G3? Director Requejo? Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Questions?
Director Ja? Director Eady?
No question.
Thank you. There are no further questions.
Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 6 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the 6 contracts be placed on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja? Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Since there's no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the omnibus be recommended for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the Finance Audit and Budget Committee meeting for the CTA Board be adjourned for April the 9th. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay. Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Ja.
Yes.
Director Edie.
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
We're done.
Transit Board for April 9th, 2025. Georgette, please call the roll.
Director Raquel,
Present.
Director Ortiz,
Here.
Chairman Barclay,
Here.
Director Jakes,
Here.
Director Ja,
9th,
Chairman
2025.
Barclay, you have a
Georgette,
quorum.
please call the roll.
No, we gotta vote. Okay, sir. Yeah.
We were advised prior to the meeting that Director Edie would be unable to attend this meeting in person due to a work issue. The chair will entertain a motion to permit Director Edie to participate remotely.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that Director Edie will be allowed to participate in the meeting remotely. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Ja.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Edie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And
Welcome.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Our next order of business is public comment. Georgette.
Chairman Barclay, we have one public comment, Mr. Isaiah White. Oh, we have no public comments. Mr. Isaiah White's not here. Is Mr. Isaiah White here? Going once. Chairman Barclay, you may move on.
Thank you. Our next item of business on the agenda is our acting president's report, which will be given by Acting President Nora Lears.
Thank you, Chairman, Directors, and thanks for the opportunity to give you an update on a few key initiatives and activity over the past month and moving forward. So first, I want to thank Chairman Barclay, Directors Lee and Director Edie for attending our Austin Green Line event on March 31st to celebrate the groundbreaking of the Austin Green Line stop and making it accessible. It was a really great event to kick off that project, that $25 million project that is a symbol of really our commitment to accessibility across the agency. It's a really exciting year on that front. We're going to have 6 new stations that are going to be announced as newly accessible. Austin a year from now, as well as Racine on the Blue Line, and our four RPM stations later this year. So a great start to celebrate that. We were also joined by Mayor Brendan Johnson, the commissioner from the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, Congressman Danny Davis, Illinois Senate President Don Harmon, and other dignitaries. And it was a great day. Followed up yesterday, I also attended a press conference with the mayor regarding the city's kicking off of the construction season. So another infrastructure announcement in which CTA was also highlighted for that work, particularly the RPM work, and ultimately at the end of the year, our groundbreaking for the Red Line extension. So 2 events that really highlight, infrastructure moving forward, and exciting news on that front as well. April is Second Chance Month, so I want to take the opportunity to also take a few minutes to talk about our program and celebrate its successes. We, of course, have a national model on that front that helps participants remove barriers to employment and continue building a strong foundation for personal and professional growth. In honor of this month, CTA throughout the month is hosting a series of workshops, empowering workshops for program participants. We just last week hosted an expungement workshop here at CTA headquarters, where a group of 70 Second Chance apprentices participated in a day of learning and empowerment, including hands-on assistance navigating the expungement process. So one of the things I want to highlight about our program, as it should, over the past decade, the law has really evolved to advance and require employers to not consider criminal backgrounds in the way that they used to. So that's great. And our Second Chance program remains, however, a shining star in this realm because of the wraparound services and the support that we give through workshops like this. So I actually had a really moving experience yesterday on the Red Line coming back from 69th Street, where I walked on the train, introduced myself to someone who was clearly a CTA employee, and he's a rail janitor apprentice, started in January and getting a lot out of the program, very enthusiastic. And as we spoke, a gentleman sitting next to us said, "Excuse me, I just applied to the Second Chance program and through the CARA Collective," and introduced himself and talked about his brother being in the program. So we spent time on the train discussing it. I connected the 2 of them to discuss kind of how he successfully got into the program and tips for, completing that process. And it was quite a special experience kind of to see that happen, and shows how much the program is valued by people and known throughout Chicago for the opportunities it provides. I also want to highlight on Second Chance, one of the key successes of the program is when employees become permanent employees here at CTA. And so far this year, we've actually made nearly 30 apprentices who have become permanent employees at CTA. In a past year, by this time in the year, we would have about 8. So we're working at a pace unseen before in terms of accomplishing that. And that comes from the work of people across departments in supporting the apprentices and moving them up in the agency. So we're really proud of that. And it's something I'm keeping an eye on and want to celebrate. April is also Autism Awareness Month, and we executed a campaign that we've had in the works for a long time that we're really excited about. So since April 1st, if you've been at a CTA rail station, you may have heard the voice of a child across the loudspeakers promoting Autism Awareness Month. This is part of a collaboration we have with the Autism Transit Project that's worked with transit agencies across the country to raise awareness around autism during April through announcements at rail stations. And we're really excited about it. I actually think it's a great step in a direction of thinking about ways to improve the experience at our stations through sound and even smell and the experience overall. So it's in addition to celebrating this month, I think it's an interesting kind of pilot activity in working with our announcement system, because you kind of witness people smiling as soon as they hear this child speak across the loudspeaker, and kind of create a cheerful, welcoming environment on CTA from a listening perspective. Also, with regards to youth, 2 key updates. Our One Summer Chicago application is open, and we're promoting that. You all know that's a program we're really proud of. Additionally, we really go above and beyond here at CTA in supporting the high school students throughout the summer. So that application is open, and we're excited about that. We also hosted a pre-apprenticeship fair at South Suburban College in South Holland on Friday, March 28th. This was free and open to the public. It was attended by 261 individuals, and it's targeting young people, primarily South Suburban high school juniors and seniors. We've done these pre-apprenticeship fairs before, but never in the suburbs. So it's also kind of an example of us reaching out to our full region to engage stakeholders and people that would be interested in transportation careers and letting them know how that works. There were 18 exhibitors at the fair, including CTA staff, workforce development partners, contractors, trade unions, and pre-apprenticeship training providers. So we're really excited about that. One of the things, and I've been updating you on, is my outreach and work with other elected officials. One of the aldermen I met with was Alderman Hall, the 6th Ward, in the past month. He's very interested in youth involvement and making connections with our agency from the high school level. And it's something I am looking closely at. We have a history of lots of initiatives we've done at CTA, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there that certainly is a pillar of the mayor's policy stance, and also just given my background as a high school teacher, something I'm particularly interested in, kind of making those connections even more deeply across our city. On Tuesday, March 18th was Transit Employee Appreciation Day. I had the honor and excitement to travel around the city for essentially the whole day, thanking employees. I went to several locations, met with over 150 employees throughout the day. It was a great, sunny, exciting day at CTA to celebrate employees. I continue to travel the system outside of that day as well, and it's a key component to my approach to leadership here is staying in touch with employees, making sure they see me and hearing from them. As I've mentioned to you before, they really know the system, and they understand our needs and our challenges and have great ideas. And some of the best things are also seeing veteran employees who have been here for decades, educating me kind of on what they thought were things that worked well 25 years ago that they'd like to see instituted, wondering where those programs went. And that, I have great conversations around how to support employees. As we know, we have a lot of new employees, so having those conversations and having people see me and understand that the agency cares about them and it knows they're such an important part to us achieving our mission is a really important aspect of my approach. This also includes a new podcast that I mentioned last week that we got off the ground, Moving Experiences, Stories of the CTA. For the inaugural episode, I interviewed Director of Bus Operations, Arlana Johnson, and Vice President of Rail Operations, Jeannie Alexander, in honor of Women's History Month. It was a great success. We have hundreds of downloads and follows already. One of the things I felt when I went through it was, we're always on a schedule here. We're always kind of rushing around. We never stop for an hour to talk to each other. So just having an hour to talk to these women, hear their experiences as CTA employees, and to be able to then broadcast that and share with the city and the agency has been quite special. And also seeing employees talk about it in the field. So as soon as we posted it, then when I was out in the field, you see people come up to you like, I listened to the podcast this morning. And I just think it's a really useful way for us all to connect. We're all over the city, 11,000 of us doing all these things. And so I'm really excited about that tool and look forward to talking with more employees and other stakeholders as a part of that. Also want to give an update. I know on a lot of people's minds is our designation of the $3 million for new security initiatives in the budget this year. So we, as you all know, a key component of that was making sure there's stakeholder engagement preliminarily before taking any action in designing a pilot. That is the stage we're in, kind of wrapping up at this point. So we do plan on giving you an update on the plan for stakeholder engagement next month. But I know that's on people's minds, so I wanted to recognize that and indicate, that is moving forward. Flora Castillo is putting together that plan. We'll be meeting with the ADA Advisory Committee and other entities as we continue to move that forward. There's a lot of overlap with that in the legislative conversation. A lot of key themes kind of come up in both places. So I am kind of monitoring how that might play into commitments that I know legislators are looking for us to make on this front, and discussions we've had today in terms of innovative ways to look at improving the customer experience. Lastly, I just want to, before I get to the legislative update, want to let the board know our upcoming Clean and Green Spring Service Tour, which is happening on the morning of Saturday, April 26th. This is our annual volunteer community service project at CTA, where we find key work locations and staff volunteers on that morning to clean up the area around the work location as well as the neighboring community. I'll be there. We'll be sure to send you all the information about it to make you aware of that as well. So to close out, I gave you all an update, but want to share publicly, the latest on the legislative front. I know that's on everyone's mind and obviously kind of the key initiative for CTA in many ways right now. So March 27th, I presented to the RTA board these scenarios that we walked through with you, and thank you for all of that input. As a reminder, the RTA had asked all the service boards to come forth with details on what service impacts would look like if funding was not received, and also if funding was received at the level we're requesting, and also information about efficiencies that we have as an agency. And so we walked through that. As we've discussed previously, the service cut scenario is painful to see. We're working very hard to never have any of that come to fruition. But the RTA meeting, I think, did present an opportunity to have a good, robust discussion on the realities of what is at stake here across all of our agencies and what funding would provide as well. Following that, on April 2nd, I testified along with the service boards at a Senate Transportation Committee hearing in Springfield. It was another good discussion of the service impacts as well as what service would be provided if funding was received. I continue to have good conversations with legislators. Key meetings are taking place on these topics, as well as, I've held some meetings with people who may be designated on the other side of the issue, right? And I want to make sure we're building bridges across opinions on this subject. Everyone that's talking about transit cares about transit. We share a lot of goals. And I think we can get somewhere where we agree upon the right way to move our region forward. So I'll continue to keep you updated on that front. I think the public and the legislators are aware of how severe the issue is, and we're working hard to make sure CTA's interests are protected throughout this process. So with that, I'll conclude and happy to discuss anything further.
Thank you, Ms. Learson. Thank you for your report. Of course, I'd like to commend you and your team again on the successful rollout of the bus frequency initiative. We received an update on its progress during briefings, and I'm pleased with the results. As I mentioned at the briefing, this is a story that needs to be told of a promise made and a promise that has been delivered. This isn't a mission accomplished as we realize we need to expand the frequency of other routes. I do want to acknowledge the success of the program and its rollout. I want to give special acknowledgement to the operations team, Mr. Bonds and his team, for their hard work to ensure that we are delivering the promise of more frequency. The hiring and behind the scenes of coordination that went into this effort played a big role. And on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you, and you've done a great job here as well. I look forward to hearing more positive feedback on this effort and seeing additional routes added to the network. I'm also pleased to hear about recent security efforts implemented to directly address persistent customer concerns around security, particularly smoking on trains, which is a top customer concern, as we discussed earlier this morning. I'm encouraged by the anti-smoking mission pilot and recommend that the team expand those efforts to increase visibility and awareness to our customers to show that we are not only listening, but we're acting with urgency. As you know, summer is quickly approaching and we want our customers to feel safe and comfortable when they ride CTA and enjoy the city and enjoy all that the city has to offer. I would also encourage the team to continue to explore other approaches to addressing smoking and security concerns and consider adding those approaches to build on the missions currently underway. I understand that we will receive updates on additional security approaches and community engagement next month. Look forward to those. Another date that's quickly approaching, as you mentioned, is the end of the legislative session in Springfield. And I know you and your team have been working diligently to engage with legislators to make the case for sustainable and equitable transit funding. These discussions are critical, ensuring our message is heard loud and clear. The work we're doing to improve service is not only underway, it's working. And funding is essential to continue to make progress in this area. Again, thank you to you and your entire leadership team for your commitment, your hard work. We stand with you in these efforts and encourage the team to continue highlighting success stories and outcomes. At this point, I'll open up to any other board members for comments.
Director Rakeo?
Just wanted to join Chairman in congratulating the team on the success of the frequent bus network. For those less familiar, this is a promise to deliver frequency at 10 minutes or less between buses, which is going well. And as the chairman mentioned, we'd love to see celebrated, communicated, and expanded. And then on the legislative front, at some point, this is going to come down to identifying funding sources, right? Like how we want to bridge the gap that exists in the budget. So I'm curious, Nora, as to how we approach this in a way that is not tunnel vision, crisis mode, one-time problem solved, but then we'll have another problem next year. So how do we get out of that window of addressing a crisis that sometimes does not allow us to think big and to think about, long-term, multi-generational solutions? And what is CTA's role? Being proactive around identifying some sources that would be helpful, that we not use, that other cities around the country use, that other cities around the world use, and we haven't even started to explore, including, of course, TOD as one of the opportunities and many others. So just curious as to how are you all applying this both crisis mode and also long-term, and what are some of the ideas circulating already as to how can we bridge this gap, or what are some of the values behind the ideas that we're exploring?
Absolutely. I think part of my approach in the weeks taking this on, there's been this tension between reform and funding and what should we talk about first, right? And I think we could talk about it all at the same time. I think, and part of it is recognizing the issues and the things that people want improvements across the region. We can do that. And in doing that, then we can jump in more deeply into the funding conversation and engage on both. So we have advocated very clearly for sustainable, reliable funding that provides the level of service that we know this region needs. Those are the general principles of it that we've brought to the table. There are conversations underway with regards to what those exact sources would be. Of course, the CMAP part report laid out some of those specific sources, and those all are generally still under discussion. But I agree with you that CTA really needs to be, front and center and a leader on this to make sure that the funding doesn't just get us kind of a Band-Aid, but gets us moving forward in the way that we need. And that's been a lot of the approach in terms of the 1.5 billion and advocating for service beyond what we have now. I see some appetite for discussion around that I'm excited about. And we're going to take those conversations and run through. We have analysis of those funding sources that we have underway and have shared with key people in terms of making sure we're looking at those specific sources responsibly and in a smart way. We're going to continue that.
Thank you. One thing that I wanted to point out, and the reason I wanted CTA to be more upfront about ideas and have some more leadership on this, is that we have made a commitment to equity in this agency in a very clear and public way. That is not always the case for everybody. And some of the sources that are being circulated out there are not going to be equitable ways of paying for this, meaning the ones who make less will be paying more than the ones who have more. Right? So I think it's important that we lead not only because we have ideas as to how to bridge the gap, but also because the ideas that we bring to the table look first as to who would be carrying or paying the most for this and who would not be burdened further by this measure. So I wanted to point that out. And also, as you all work with the legislators, I wanted to point out that the public also is really important to bring into the conversation. I am not quite sure that people understand how much it costs to run transit, what the benefits are, how that compares with other things that we pay for, like car-oriented infrastructure. So I wonder also what the team could do to help communicate to the public, hey, here's the gap, this is why, and this is how much we pay for transit in comparison with other things. Help us also make the case, because it's great to have that asset, to be able to walk to a train station, to a bus stop, whatever you are in Cook County, pretty much, and yet I'm not sure people, again, understand, what that costs and what the savings are for their wallets, and the impacts would be if that disappeared overnight and had to rely exclusively on cars, Ubers and all that. So just wanted to point that out. That's the reason I'm pushing for CTA to be more upfront about this.
Yeah, understood. And I think those are really important points to deepen the conversation around what those sources are and who gets impacted if one is chosen over the other. As well as, the affordability of transit and the impact of people financially on an individual basis if those cuts are made. So I definitely agree.
I'll give you one example. When we were hearing about the pilot, the regional pilot, there was a clear message to me in that conversation that was, if you live in the region and if you are in walking distance to a train station or bus stop, for $9.50, you can access for 24 hours whatever you want throughout the region. That is a great message to put out there, especially when you compare to what would happen if that station wasn't there. So what would it take in terms of wallet dollars for somebody, rather than having those that opportunity to pay $9.50 and arrive from wherever you are in Cook County and beyond to downtown? You had to use a car, how much would you pay in gas? How much would you pay in parking and all that? That kind of comparison messaging is being missing, and I think it's time to ramp it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think also just reminding people, we're talking about getting non-riders back, reminding people how affordable we are. They may forget how low our fare is, and, get used to buying those $7 Ubers more than once a day over and over again and starting to calculate for people the impact of that. I agree, is an important part of this.
Thanks.
So again, just coupling that with our frequency, I think could be a really great storyline. Again, congratulations on our increased frequency for buses particularly. I've always felt that we're, decently well in our trains, but there's a lot of areas in our city who could benefit from a lot more frequency, and not just Loop, but across our city, farther west. So thank you, and really excited to the team for making that possible.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
Director Ja?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Eady?
Yes, I want to first just commend Madam President on your engaging the legislators and even as you gave us an update on the other day, saying that it appears it's being embraced in a positive vein. And so we're happy about hearing that it's moving in the right direction. But let me just, question, you raised up about the Second Chance program. And could you maybe help me to better understand what the path is for, say, more advanced opportunities? We know what it provides, at the entry level, but what is the path to something more elevated, more, broader participation within CTA? What is that path?
So, Director, once an apprentice works here, their path, through the agency would be similar to any employee that we have. The key is that initial period of support through several agencies that we work with, as well as a very robust program we have internally to support apprentices in that initial first role they have. And then they can apply to positions like any other employee and use their successful CTA experience to obtain those positions. And you will see throughout the agency, people work across departments that are former apprentices in various positions. And we can get you more data kind of over the years of the paths that individual apprentices have taken and trends that you'd see. It's permanent positions in the role that they took on as apprentice, as well as various positions throughout the agency.
Yeah, I would be curious to see that because certainly it's vitally important as people are moving through their life and just upgrade their quality of living. So glad to know that, and I would want to see that. But secondly, we hear often about, our mayor has said about the 29,000 summer jobs that his administration has been able to provide. What numbers has CTA participated in that summer job program?
Sure. I believe last year it was 200 one summer Chicago interns that we had, and we're going to plan to meet that number again this summer.
Okay, you kind of broke up. Did you give a number?
Sure. Yeah, it's 200, Director Eady.
Oh,
200 per
okay.
summer. Yeah. And, we're proud of that number. It's a big number. I think similar to our Second Chance program, what's key to understanding is we really stand out amongst one summer Chicago programs across the city in terms of the additional curriculum we provide, skills training, discussions about, obtaining a job, and get really creative in terms of thematic work around CTA and the work that they do here. So we'll continue to talk to you about that, but I think we look at the number and we look at the breadth of the program to determine, what we're most proud of.
So are you saying the 200, is that our ceiling by choice?
It's the floor. Yeah, we can grow from there. And what we're always assessing is, the resources that we have around it and building that up to make sure we can, adequately support every intern in the way that we have previously. So we're always looking to expand it. And like I say, the application is open for CTA, and we can keep you updated and look to grow the program further.
Okay. And can I be heard?
Yes. We can hear you, Director Eady.
I was just getting some interference on this end. And then the last thing is concerning the podcast that I heard you talk about. That's primarily for the employees, correct?
It's publicly posted on anywhere you can listen to podcasts. I've never said that sentence before, but that's what I hear people say about podcasts. So it's publicly available. Yeah. But it's very much focused on employees.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh. And the reason why I raised that up is I just thought that'd be a wonderful opportunity for employees to also get some feedback from the riders. And so I didn't know exactly how that is being utilized in that way.
Yeah, it's not going to be limited to employees. That's kind of the initial phase. We've seen other transit agencies launch podcasts that are often focused on their employees and celebrating their experiences and learning from them. So that's my first focus. But it's also been marketed already as something that's going to bring on stakeholders and talk about transit issues more broadly. So absolutely, it's going to be also discussing the rider experience and transit from many different perspectives.
Yeah, because I'm certain that would be very helpful to the employees, just hearing firsthand from the riders, positive or negative. It's just all good feedback. So, so those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Eady.
So thank.
Our next order of business is approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 12th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So
I'll abstain. I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Shaw, seconded by Director Jakes, that the minutes from the regular board meeting of March 12th, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Okay.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business on the agenda is executive session. Kent Ray, I understand that we have an executive session today.
Yes, Chairman, the board will recess into closed session pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120, Section 2C 1, 2, 11, and 21.
We have a motion on the executive session stated by council.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board recess into executive council for the reasons stated by council. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes. Chairman Barclay.
open session.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board we return to open session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 6A. Kent?
Item 6A, the board reviewed the closed session meeting minutes for March 12th, 2025.
And please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes, March 12th, 2025.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Requejo, that the closed session minutes from March 12th, 2025 be approved as submitted. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja? Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 5B. Kent?
Thank you, Chairman. In item 5B, the board reviewed an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of tentative agreements with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District 8.
I will now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing executive session execution, of a collective bargaining agreement containing terms, tentative agreements with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District number 8.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the ordinance authorizing the collective bargaining agreement be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 6, board matters. Georgette, do we have any board matters today?
Chairman Barclay, there are no board matters.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Jakes.
I'm only pull this up in a second. Thank you. The committee met earlier this morning and approved the March 12th, 2025 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee reviewed 3 ordinances. 1, review of an ordinance amending ordinance 024-143, approving the fiscal years 2025 through 2029 capital improvement program. 2, review of an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional trade agreement with the city of Chicago through its Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events for 2025. 3, review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with RTA, Metro, and PACE for the Regional Day Pass Pilot Program. The committee also reviewed 6 contracts. The committee placed the 3 ordinances and 6 of the contracts on the omnibus. The committee approved and recommended for board approval 3 ordinances and 6 contracts. This concludes the report of Finance, Audit, and Budget.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the omnibus be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo? Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes? Director Ja? Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Georgette, I believe that we're going to defer the construction report.
Chairman Barclay, we would love to take a motion to defer the construction report.
Chair will entertain a motion to defer the construction report to next month.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the construction report be deferred to next month. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja? Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Chairman Barclay, there's no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting of April 9th, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz that meeting be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.